Picture this. A Roman soldier gets paid his weekly wages, and instead of coins, he gets salt. Not as an insult, not as a joke. Salt was so valuable that armies marched for it, wars were fought over it, and entire trade routes were built around it. The word salary literally comes from the Latin word for salt.
And here's the wild part. That same pattern, using scarce, useful things as money, has repeated itself across every civilization in history. Salt, spice, cloth, shells. The form changes, but the logic never does. Today we're going back to where it all started.
Three stories today. The ancient world of salt and spice as money. Then how a group of rebels in the 1990s tried to build digital money before anyone had heard of Bitcoin. And finally, what stablecoins are doing to international payments right now. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, I'm Maya Tech.
And I'm Rich the Stacker. This week is our history deep dive. But before we time travel, we're going to do one quick check on where gold and silver stand right now. Then it's straight into three stories that explain why money works the way it does. And honestly, these stories are stranger than anything happening in markets right now.
Before we time travel back 3,000 years, let's do a quick check on where things stand right now. Gold is sitting at around $4,500 an ounce this week, basically flat, just catching its breath after a strong run. Silver is the more interesting one. It's up again, sitting at around $75.
And that's the story that keeps repeating lately. Gold holds steady while silver does the heavy lifting. Silver is up something like 7% on the week, and it's riding the same wave we've been talking about. AI data centers, solar panels, all of it needs silver. The metal that builds things is having its moment.
Right. And here's the simple way to think about it. Gold is the one people run to when they're scared. Silver is the one people need when they're building. Lately, the world is doing a lot more building than panicking. And, that's why silver keeps outpacing gold.
The gold to silver ratio backs that up. It's been compressing for weeks now, which is just a fancy way of saying silver is catching up to gold. We've been tracking that on the show, and it's still heading in the same direction.
So that's your quick snapshot. Gold steady, silver climbing, the ratio tightening. But here's the thing, none of this is new. Humans have been picking winners and losers among valuable materials for, thousands of years.
And that's exactly why we're doing something different today. No price charts after this, no market recap. Because to really understand why silver and gold behave the way they do, you have to go back, way back, like salt is money back.
So consider this your bridge from the present to the past. Let's leave 2026 behind for a bit and go find out where money actually came from. Okay, segment 1. Salt, spice, and everything nice. And by nice, I mean brutal trade wars, collapsed empires, and the very strange origins of the global economy. Rich, set the scene.
All right, go back about 5,000 years. No banks, no paper money, no coins yet either. But people still needed to trade. A farmer with too much wheat needed sandals. A shepherd with too many goats needed grain. So, what did they use as money?
Whatever was useful and scarce. And the list is genuinely surprising. Cowrie shells in China and Africa, cacao beans in Mesoamerica, grain in Egypt, cloth in parts of West Africa. The thing they all had in common was that everyone agreed they had value.
But salt was different. Salt was not just useful, it was essential. Before refrigeration, salt was the only way to preserve food. You salted your meat, your fish, your vegetables. Without salt, your food rotted. Without salt, armies could not march. Without salt, civilizations literally could not function.
Here's what made salt so powerful as money. It checked every box. It was portable, you could carry it. It was divisible. You could use a pinch or a pound. It was durable enough. And most importantly, you could not fake it. Salt is salt. You either had it or you did not.
Rome built an entire road just to move salt. The Via Salaria, the Salt Road. It ran from the Adriatic coast straight into Rome. Soldiers were paid partly in salt, hence the word salary, and controlling salt meant controlling power. Ethiopia's rulers taxed salt. Indian emperors stockpiled it.
Now here's where spices enter the story. By the medieval period, black pepper was so valuable in Europe that it was literally used to pay rent and taxes. A single sack of pepper could buy you freedom from serfdom. Nobles accepted pepper as payment for debts.
And the reason pepper was worth so much was geography. All the pepper in the world came from one place, the Malabar coast of India. To get it to Europe, it had to pass through Arab merchants, then Ottoman middlemen, then Venetian traders. Every hand it passed through took a cut.
So by the time pepper reached a market in London or Paris, it had been marked up so many times it was worth its weight in silver. That markup is what drove the age of exploration. Portugal, Spain, England, they were not sailing around Africa to discover new lands. They were trying to cut out the middlemen.
Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa in 1498 and found the direct route to India. On his first voyage, he brought back enough pepper and spice to pay for the entire expedition 60 times over. 60 times. The return on investment was insane. That single voyage reshaped global trade forever.
And here's the irony. The moment Portugal found the direct route, spice prices in Europe started collapsing because the scarcity was never really about the spice itself. It was about the supply chain. Once the middlemen were cut out, the magic was gone. Pepper became cheap, affordable, common.
Here is the part that most history classes skip. When the spice trade collapsed as a premium business, it did not destroy wealth. It redirected it. The same ships, the same trade networks, the same financial systems that moved pepper started moving something else. People, cotton, sugar, and eventually, ideas.
And the financial tools invented to fund spice expeditions, joint stock companies, insurance contracts, letters of credit, those became the foundation of modern capitalism. The Dutch East India Company was basically the world's first publicly traded corporation. It existed because someone needed to fund a pepper run.
I want to sit with that for a second, because I think this is the nuance people miss. Salt and spice were not just interesting historical curiosities, they were the reason we have stock markets, the reason we have insurance, the reason we have global trade finance. The entire modern financial system was built around the problem of moving food.
I would push back slightly on that framing, though. The financial tools existed because of scarcity and risk, not specifically because of salt and pepper. If it had not been spices, it would have been something else. The human instinct to manage risk and pool resources would have found another vehicle.
Fair point. I'll give you that. But here's what I'll hold on to. The timing matters. The scale of the spice trade was large enough to require institutional solution. That's what pushed individual traders to form companies, create contracts, and invent insurance. The specific commodity accelerated the timeline.
Okay, so here is why this matters today. Every time something becomes the dominant medium of exchange, whether it is salt, pepper, gold, or Bitcoin, the infrastructure built around it outlasts the thing itself. The question worth asking is, what infrastructure are we building around today's money systems that will outlast them?
Fast forward to today, and silver is surging on industrial demand from AI data centers and solar panels. Same logic as the spice trade. The metal is not valuable because it is pretty. It is valuable because it is essential to the infrastructure of this era. The form changes. The logic never does.
So commodity money worked because scarcity and usefulness were baked into the physical thing. Now, here's the fascinating question. What happens when a group of mathematicians in the 1992nd tried to create money that was scarce and useful but completely digital? That is our next story.
So the cypherpunks wanted money that governments could not control. What if the answer to that is not a rebel technology but a mainstream one? What if the real disruption to the global payment system is happening through stablecoins right now at a scale most people have not noticed? The year is 1992. The internet exists, but it is basically just universities and government computers talking to each other. A small group of mathematicians, programmers, and libertarians start meeting in San Francisco. They call themselves the Cypherpunks, and they are furious.
Furious about what? Privacy. They could see that the digital age was coming. They could see that once money went digital, governments and banks would be able to track every transaction you ever made, every coffee, every donation, every payment. And they wanted to stop that before it happened.
Their manifesto, written by Eric Hughes in 1993, opened with a line that still lands today. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. They were not against the internet. They were against the idea that using the internet meant giving up all your financial privacy forever.
So, they got to work. The first real attempt at digital money was called DigiCash, created by David Chaum in 1989. Chaum was a cryptographer, genuinely brilliant, and he invented something called blind signatures. Think of it like putting a document inside a carbon copy envelope. The bank stamps it without seeing what's inside.
DigiCash was technically elegant. You could make digital payments that were private. The bank knew money moved but could not see who sent it to whom. Banks were interested. Microsoft reportedly offered $20 million to license the technology. Chaum turned them down. He wanted more control over how it was deployed.
And that decision cost him everything. DigiCash filed for bankruptcy in 1998, but the ideas survived. Other cypherpunks picked up where Chaum left off. There was Hashcash, which introduced the idea of computational proof of work. There was B-Money, which sketched out a decentralized digital currency system.
E-Gold was another attempt. It launched in 1996. The idea was simple. You deposit actual gold, you get digital tokens backed by that gold, and you can send those tokens anywhere in the world instantly. At its peak, eGold was processing over $2 billion a year in transactions. Real money, real volume.
And then the US government shut it down in 2007. The charge was operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. The founders went to federal court. The service died. But here's what is interesting. eGold failed not because the technology was bad. It failed because it had a central point of control.
Here is the twist. Every single one of these failures taught the person who became Satoshi Nakamoto exactly what not to do. No central servers, no company that could be sued, no single point of failure. Bitcoin's design in 2008 was essentially a checklist of lessons learned from a decade of failed digital money experiments.
As an AI, I can pull up every record from this era, and honestly, what strikes me most is how close they got. DigiCash had the privacy piece, eGold had the commodity backing piece, B-Money had the decentralization concept. Satoshi basically assembled the puzzle pieces that were already on the table.
I want to add something to that. The timing was not random. The Bitcoin white paper dropped in October 2008, right in the middle of the global financial crisis. Banks were failing. Governments were printing money. The cypherpunk argument that you cannot trust institutions suddenly felt very real to a lot of people.
And that context is everything. Bitcoin was not invented in a vacuum. It was a direct response to a specific failure of the existing financial system. Fast forward to today, and Bitcoin is trading around $67,000, down roughly 7% this week, with regulators in the US and EU turning up the pressure again.
The cypherpunks would find that deeply ironic. They built tools to escape government control, and now governments are trying to regulate those tools. The question they would ask is the same one from 1993. How do you build financial privacy into a world that keeps trying to surveil everything? Picture a small business owner in Lagos trying to pay a supplier in Manila. She goes to her bank. The bank charges a fee. Then a correspondent bank in Europe takes another cut. Then a bank in Asia takes another cut. By the time the money arrives 3 to 5 days later, she has lost maybe 8% to fees. That is the current system.
That system is called correspondent banking, and it was designed in the 1970s for a world of paper and telex machines. The SWIFT network, which is the messaging layer that connects banks globally, launched in 1973, and it is 53 years old. And it is still how most international money moves today.
Now here is what stablecoins do differently. Instead of passing a message through 5 banks, you send a dollar-pegged token directly from one digital wallet to another. It settles in seconds. The fee is a fraction of a cent, and it works at any hour, on weekends, on holidays, whenever.
And the adoption numbers are real. Stablecoin transaction volumes have been growing rapidly, particularly in emerging markets where the local currency is unstable. In countries dealing with high inflation, people are holding USDT or USDC not as a speculative bet, but as a practical way to hold dollars without a US bank account.
Here is a detail that gets overlooked. The major stablecoins, USDT and USDC, are backed by US Treasury bills. So when someone in Argentina buys USDT to protect their savings, Tether goes out and buys US government debt. The demand for stablecoins is quietly propping up demand for US Treasuries. Think about that. Think.
Okay, I want to push back on that framing slightly. Yes, Tether holds treasuries. The Tether question, whether it is fully backed and fully audited, is still an open one. The reserve transparency has improved, but it is not at the level of a regulated bank or money market fund. That matters when we are talking about a systemic role.
Fair. And that is actually the most important nuance here. Stablecoins are solving a real problem. The international payment system is genuinely broken for most of the world, but the solution is currently running on infrastructure that is not fully transparent. The technology is ahead of the trust.
And now you have governments responding. The EU is already regulating stablecoins under MiCA. The US is working on its own stablecoin legislation. So the cypherpunk dream of money outside government control is colliding with the reality that the most successful version of digital money is essentially a digitized dollar.
And here is the historical echo. Remember the spice trade? The moment Portugal found the direct route, it disrupted the entire middleman system. Stablecoins are the direct route for money. The correspondent banks are the middlemen. The question is not whether disruption happens. It is who controls the new route.
And that brings us to today. Stablecoins are already eating international payments in emerging markets. The question is whether regulated, transparent versions can scale globally without losing what made them useful. Because the moment they are fully controlled, they start to look a lot like the old system with a new coat of paint.
All right, let's bring it together. 3 stories today. Salt and spice as money. the Cypherpunks and their failed experiments before Bitcoin, and stablecoins disrupting international payments. And here's the thread that runs through all three.
Every form of money in history has been a solution to a specific problem of its time. Salt solved the food preservation and portability problem. Spice solved the cross-continental trade problem. The cypherpunks were trying to solve the digital privacy problem. Stablecoins are solving the cross-border payment problem.
And in every case, the solution created unintended consequences. Salt roads became military supply lines. Spice trade infrastructure became the stock market. Failed digital money experiments became Bitcoin. The infrastructure built around a solution always outlives the original problem. Always.
So here's the real question we want to leave you with. If stablecoins become the dominant rail for global payments and they get regulated and controlled, what unintended consequence does that create? What is the next problem that gets invented out of that solution? That is the question we're thinking about.
A quick note before we close out. Nothing in this episode is financial advice. We are historians today, not advisors. The stories are real. The lessons are real. What you do with them is entirely up to you.
That is a wrap on episode 8, 3,000 years of money history in 25 minutes. Which story surprised you most? The salt salary connection, the DigiCash near miss, or the stablecoin treasury link? Tell us in the comment. We genuinely read them.
I'm Rich the Stacker.
And I'm Maya Tech. See you next week.